Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all so much for taking the time to join us today. I know it may be late in some of you all's home countries, but we're very thankful that you took the time out to join us to learn about your next steps once you've been admitted. So I'm going to start with some introductions and then we'll get started. So my name is Caitlin Beard. I'm the Director of Graduate Recruitment here at the University of Alabama.
And I'm Amanda Malpe. I'm the International Admissions Officer here in the Graduate School at the University of Alabama.
Hi, and I'm Charter Morris. I'm Director of International Student Scholar Services. So we do the visa support for incoming international students.
All right, thank you guys for joining us to help answer some of these students' questions. I just want to remind the students who are with us today that this session is for our international students who have been admitted to the university for spring 2023. If you happen to be a student who is currently applying or has applied and you're waiting for your admission decision, you're welcome to stay and join us. But we will only be answering questions from admitted students who need, support on their next steps. We do have some other sessions scheduled just for applicants, and I have dropped that in the chat. If you would like to register for an upcoming session, we actually have one, I believe, coming up in a few weeks, if not the next month or so, for applicants who are interested in applying. We encourage you to register for that, but you're welcome to stay, but we will only be answering questions about admitted students questions. So the first thing, I will let Charter and Amanda kind of talk about your next steps once you're admitted, both what we need maybe from the admission side as well as the visa process and kind of what you need to do next. Then we're going to answer some questions that were submitted through the form when you registered. We'll go through those and then we'll open it up to questions on the Q&A feature. And so if you have any questions, you can go ahead and send those in the Q&A now, or if you would like to wait until we run through the ones, we will probably answer your question if you submitted that on the form first. So I'll let Amanda and Charter, get started, and then we'll answer those questions.
So since mine's a little bit shorter than all the requirements that the charter may have, for us after admission, what we're going to need from you are your official documents. So we're going to need official transcripts, any test scores, so your IELTS or TOEFL score or a GRE if that's required. Those official documents need to be sent to us. You do not have to submit them before you arrive on campus, however. So it is fine to get a sealed copy of your transcripts from your home country and bring them with you. There is no requirement to have your transcripts before Charter's office will issue an I-20. I know it may seem that way. They will still issue it even if we don't have your official transcripts. So don't worry so much about that. We just need to get those documents once you arrive on campus. And for us, that's kind of where we pass the baton off to Charter's office.
And so the baton for us is once you've been admitted, what we're looking for is if any of you are in need of visa support, if you're abroad and you're applying for your F1 or J1 student visa, we will work with you to issue the I-20 for the F1 students and DS 2019 for J1 students. A lot of students will ask, well, what about the J1? There's some confusion. J1s typically are only for students who are sponsored by their home government. So if we have any students here who are from Turkey and are on Turkish scholarships, the Turkish government usually makes it a condition of that scholarship that they come on a J1 visa. The same thing for Thailand and a few other countries. So it's really rare that we use the J1 visa. Most everyone will be seeking an F1 student visa, in which case you're going to be pursuing an I-20. So basically what we're looking for is we have a secure portal. You can access it through our website very easily, where you can upload your documents. I am going to share this with Caitlin so that she can put this out to everyone. That link takes you to how to get your I-20. So really the things that we need from you Now, we do get most of your information that pulls in from the application portal. So what you put into your application form will then move to us. But those are some basic details, and we don't quite get everything that we need to actually issue the I-20. So we ask that you complete an I-20 request form. This is your chance to give us both your personal biographical details that are included in your passport, as well as the information for any dependents. So if you have a spouse or any children who will be coming with you, we need to collect their documents as well. With that, you are going to upload copies of your main passport page. That sometimes can be a little tricky because maybe your passport's expiring, or maybe you're still waiting for your passport to be issued. What's important for us is that we have an official government document that tells us exactly how your name is spelled. It has exactly how it will be included in the passport details. And so the passport is the most important one for us. But if you do not have your passport, or if you're still waiting on this, we can work with other types of documents, but the passport is the one that's going to tell us officially how your name will then appear on your visa. And so we need to make sure our I-20 matches that. The other critical piece of information for us is that you include your proof of funding. Now, that might be an assistantship from your department. It may be a scholarship or a fellowship awarded to you. But more than likely, it's going to be that plus a combination of possibly personal funds, especially if you have a spouse or children that you're bringing with you. Keep in mind, our estimates for expenses here are not just for the 9-month year. We include estimates for the 12-month living expenses, so for the summer months. And so while your assistantship might fully cover the 9-month period, it may not be sufficient to also cover your additional summer living expenses. And so a lot of times, even with a full assistantship, a student might have to still show maybe $3,000 of personal funds. And if they're including any dependents, they'll need to show personal funds or family funds to cover those dependent expenses as well, which we estimate at $5,000 per year, per person. So those are the main documents. On top of all of that, we ask that you upload a scan of the admission letter when you're doing this. Now, while a lot of this information ports over to our system from the admissions office and from the graduate school, it doesn't always align with the letter that is issued. So we ask for the letter so that when we're issuing the documents, we make sure that it actually lines up. I can tell you that sometimes we do have to reach out to Amanda and say, well, the letter reflects this term of admission, but this is what's coming over here. And it gives us a chance to make sure that that's corrected before we issue a document. The worst thing in the world is to send you an I-20 that reflects the wrong information. So after we get all of those things, just to let you know, it takes about 5 business days. So one week for us to process that. We get a lot of requests throughout the year, and not just for new incoming students, but for our current students. And we have a fairly large international student population. We also serve international faculty and researchers. So we try to keep a tidy queue and make sure that everything gets processed on time. But sometimes it does take us that full week. So we do ask you to bear with us once you've submitted. And some things that could maybe delay that is if there are errors in the data feed, we may have to work with admissions and graduate school to kind of figure out what is going on with that error. We'll try to be as transparent as possible, but do bear with us. When we issue the I-20, it's issued as an electronic copy. We send it as a scanned document with all of your next steps for paying your CBIS fee and booking your visa appointment. I do want to just add, for our part of the process, yes, it takes about 5 days to get the I-20 ready if everything is in order. But if there is anything that is not quite in order, maybe the funding is not adequate, we're going to reach out to you to to correct that or to get us additional documentation. Until we receive it, we're not able to process an I-20. And that does delay things. So when we talk about a 5-day processing time, it's from a complete packet, not just part of the packet. And so we really just want to stress with that. We are always available to answer questions. Inquiries sent to our international account are then forwarded to the 2 staff who process the I-20s, and they do try to respond as quickly as they can, but often it takes us a day or 2 to also get a response back. So do bear with us on that. All the same, we do try to have a quick turnaround so that you can get your visa appointment booked. I did see in the question and answer, somebody's asking what are the processes for getting an Form I-20. I was going to just again stress, I believe Caitlin has shared out the link to our main page for obtaining an I-20. And if you go to that page, it kind of breaks down not just how to get the I-20, but what does the I-20 look like? What do the different sections mean? You'll see that under the understanding the I-20 section. Further down, you'll see how to pay your SEVIS fee and how to apply for your visa, and some other tips on what to expect out of the visa application process.
Awesome. Thank you, Charter. I just wanted to remind everyone who has joined us since we got started that this session is for our newly admitted students who are planning to enroll in spring 2023. If you're currently working on your application or you're just interested in learning more information about the university, we do have other sessions specifically for applicants that we encourage you to register for. You're more than welcome to stay on and learn more because we hope that you will be admitted to the university. But we will only be answering questions about being admitted and those next steps. We have had some questions that were submitted while you were registering, and we're going to go through those first. So if you submitted a question, we hope to answer that first, and then we'll move on to any questions that you guys submit in the Q&A section here. So if you do have some questions that you weren't able to submit, you can go ahead and send those now and we'll get to those. But I do want to start with our first question. What are the vaccines that I'm expected to take as a newly admitted student? Great question.
I can answer a little bit of that. So if you're talking about vaccines for COVID, so from an immigration perspective, any non-immigrant coming to the United States, this means anyone who is not a U.S. citizen or U.S. permanent resident, will have to have proof of COVID vaccination to enter the United States, with some exceptions. And there are exceptions for those who are under the age of 16, and there are exceptions for those who are coming from countries where maybe a vaccine is not available, but they're looking for full vaccination status. Separate from that, and I'll share a link to that section about coronavirus information for new students here with you, Caitlin, if we can share that out. The other vaccine requirements are for your standard vaccination requirements. That's like the MMR and a number of others. So I'm going to bring that up really quickly. The immunizations that are required, you have to have proof of a meningitis vaccination, either Menactra or Menveo, for anyone under the age of 21 who will live in on-campus housing. So for most of our graduate students, this doesn't necessarily apply. If you were born after 1956, you have to have proof of 2 measles-containing vaccinations. This has to be at least one of those be an MMR vaccination after 1980. And you'll have to bring that documentation of your immunization from home. You can also upload that documentation. And finally, you have to have acceptable proof of a tuberculosis screening within the last year. If you have previously had tuberculosis, what they'll do is they'll do a test here on campus after your arrival. I can include this immunization information from the Student Health Center as well. This, just to be to make you aware, the standard immunizations for the measles, mumps, and rubella, and the tuberculosis screening and meningitis are ones that are required for all students at the university, not just international students. So any student coming in would have to meet those requirements by state law. This is true of many different states, but every state differs in exactly what it requires as proof of vaccinations. Alabama's just happens to be this. And so if you'll take a look at that, it gives you information about how you can submit those vaccination proofs to the Student Health Center for clearance, or how you can take care of that post-arrival. One good thing to know is if you are missing any of those vaccinations for the MMR, or you have to have tuberculosis screening upon arrival, our student health insurance that we use at the university covers those vaccinations and screenings.
Charter, I believe I made you and Amanda co-host. Hopefully you can now put stuff to everyone. I'll go ahead and drop that one. But it looks like when I clicked on the link, it said that it wasn't found.
Oh,
good.
I'll double check. They SHC, the Student Health Center, yeah, they moved under the College of Community Health Sciences, and so when they did, I believe it moved it over. So the immunization, I've got it now under this link. So I'm going to put this link here into the link, and that gives me a reason to go update my website again. So
perfect.
This is only the 10th or 12th time they've moved that link as they've updated their website. But
yeah, we love that. So the next question is just about funding. How do I access funding? Amanda, if you would like to answer that one.
Yeah, so the way to access funding is going to be reaching out to your department. And I do not mean reaching out to your department and giving them an email that says, hey, please give me funding. That's not what you want to do. The way that you want to go about this is you want to look for professors who are in your department that your research interests align with. Hopefully when you applied, that's what you did first, to make sure that there was someone that your research would go well with. And if you find those persons, reach out to them, share a copy of your CV or your resume, and talk about your research interests and how theirs aligns with yours and what you could do together. Don't just reach out to them looking for funding or asking for funding. That's the best way to get ignored. So do not do that. And make sure that you also are looking for other opportunities. The student job site sometimes will have assistantships listed on it. I will drop a link to that. It will actually have it listed. It will say next to it, it will say student graduate assistant sometimes, or student assistant. Make sure you look at those and apply for those before you come to campus. That's also another opportunity. I think for fall, they're more often available there, but they do post them year round. So be sure that you use that as a resource as well.
And thanks for mentioning. I was just going to piggyback on the student jobs link. So there are, of course, the assistantship funding and scholarship funding, which usually comes with a tuition benefit. And sometimes those are posted through the student jobs website, but they also post other student jobs. These are just regular hourly positions that are available on campus. One thing that some students will ask us is if that is enough to cover their expenses while they're here. Most student jobs on campus are typically, between $7.25 per hour up to $10 to $15 per hour, which is not bad money for an on-campus job for a student, but it will not be significant enough to cover your tuition and living expenses here. It will help to supplement your living expenses, but many of our international students have on-campus jobs, whether through an assistantship that covers their tuition and fees, or just as something to supplement their monthly expenses.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. And so the next question that was submitted was, when is the registration time for spring 2023 and when is orientation? So one of y'all wanted to answer that.
I believe registration is the end of October.
Yes, well, I looked before and it's October 24th is when registration.
I was going to say the
It was a
28th, so I was
test.
off.
And it will run until January 18th. So classes begin on January 11th, and January 18th is the last day of registration for the spring semester for those coming in spring. And so for those of you who have been admitted for spring 23, you'll probably be working with your academic departments to get registered, or at least get clearances to register for your classes. Many students will register before arrival. If there are any delays for your visa or for something like that, where you end up having to defer to a future semester, you'll need to work with your department about, dropping those courses. But yeah, pre-registration, that window it's a pretty broad window between October and the middle of January. And then the other question was about orientation. When is the graduate school orientation for spring?
It hasn't officially been selected, but typically it is the Saturday or the Sunday before classes start. And so with classes starting on January 10th, it will either be on that Saturday the 7th or Sunday the 8th
Gotcha.
for the graduate school orientation.
Right.
I would add to Charter, your deadlines for submitting I-20 for spring. What are those?
Yeah, generally speaking, we need a minimum of a month. We try to set that for December, about a month out, so roughly December 15th. Honestly, though, it is nearly impossible in the middle of December for you to get your I-20 and to be able to book a visa appointment. So for those of you who are trying to get a visa appointment, I know that once you get your documents to us, it is urgent for us to turn that around to you as quickly as possible. But likewise, we can only move as fast as you can get that documents to our office so that we can process that. So a lot of that control over your timing is really more in your hands to get that to us. I would say a reasonable deadline for most international students would be the middle of November to get all of the documents in. Not to say that is the absolute deadline. I'm just saying, middle of November, you have a much greater chance of being able to secure a visa appointment, complete your visa appointment and interview, and get your visa on time to arrive in January.
Definitely. Another question is about housing. And specifically, someone had asked, I want to rent a home available on the 9th of December. What are your suggestions? Which areas do you recommend, especially if I wanted to commute by foot to campus?
That is a really good question. I think it would be helpful to have some more housing sessions or a housing specific session. I work very closely with the Office of Off-Campus Housing. Off-campus housing is part of the student life, our student affairs, and they're housed within Dean of Students' office. Now, when we say Office of Off-Campus Housing, it's one person. And so she is coordinating with the major renting complexes around town. What every international student should know is that, I know that there is a lot of pressure to make sure to secure your apartment or home far in advance of your arrival, but that can actually be to your detriment. I deal regularly with students who have gotten locked into contracts much too early. And when they see the place, when they actually physically get there, realize this is not the place for me. And so what I've recommended to every student, and what off-campus housing recommends to every student, is make a plan to have temporary accommodations for your first few days so you can actually look at these places before signing any contract or lease. Because once you're signed with a lease, you are legally obligated to that property for the entire duration of the lease, and getting out of it is a real difficulty. So I would say, if you're looking nearby campus, just realize that near campus is in high demand. So if you're looking for walkability, it may be really hard for you to find something that is both affordable and is nice. The rules of housing, this is universal, whether it's here or anywhere else in the country or in the world, really, is you have 3 criteria and you can only get 2 of these. You can choose something that is affordable, something that is nice, or something that is close in proximity. You are never going to get all 3. You're going to get affordable and nice, but it will not be close to the university. You can get affordable and close, but it might not be nice. When I say that, it may be an older property. It may be not nearly as nice as home, and it may still be more expensive than what you anticipated. Average rental here is somewhere around $700 per month for a 1-bedroom place. And that is pretty low cost. To have a 2-bedroom apartment that maybe you can share with a roommate, you're probably looking closer to like $800 to $900 a month in the nearby area. There might be cheaper, but they would also be not as nice. They may be a little bit more run down. When you're looking at apartments, I think that the other tip that I would have is that when you talk to them about proximity, ask them about how many miles or kilometers it is to campus. Miles, just a rough, it's not ideal, but 1 mile, 2 kilometers, that's about right. It's not quite exact, but it's close enough. But when you talk about miles to campus, you get a better sense for how walkable it is. You want to be within 1 to 2 miles of campus if you're going to walk. And the problem that a lot of apartments have is they talk about distance in minutes. And what they mean by minutes is how long it takes you to drive from their apartment to campus. And minutes is not a good measurement. I am 10 minutes from campus, but I am 1.5 miles from campus. So I can get from point A to point B in about 10 minutes by car. So when they say things like that, it may make you think, oh, it's a 10-minute walk. It is not a 10-minute walk. It's like a 30-minute walk. So just be very well aware of that. Yeah.
And I would add too, it may be a 1 mile walk, but you may have to cross a major highway that may not have a crosswalk, or there may be a train that frequently comes through at 7:50 a.m. when you need to be on campus by 8. So definitely looking at campus maps. And we do have ambassadors on our website that would be more than happy to answer any of those questions. We do have a Facebook group just for graduate students that I'll drop in the chat. Feel free to request to join if you've been admitted. And we do have some students, of course, if you're looking for a roommate. There's also a form I see on the off-campus housing website if you're looking for a roommate. And we definitely encourage that.
And just to add on to that, I think you make a good point. Like, for instance, there is a wonderful facility right on the river. It's a beautiful place, Evolve. And I have a number of students who live there. And one of the things about it is they have a shuttle to campus, but the shuttle only operates from Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. until like early evening hours. And so on the weekends, there are no shuttle services. And I have students that have been living there. And when we have activities on the weekend, they have to Uber over to campus. And it's on the other side of a highway. And so they can't just walk across the highway. It's not safe. In fact, it's extremely dangerous. And so where they're located it's beautiful, wonderful spot, but it really is not the ideal place to be. So that is where looking at a location, when you see it in person and you can get a better feel for where it is in relation to where you have to go to school, it gives you a much better sense for what is workable and what is not.
Perfect. And then the other question was, let me see, where did it? Here it is. Okay. So they were asking, the Crimson Ride, what is the process? Is it free for students who live outside of campus?
100%. It is free to the university, to staff, faculty, and to our guests. You just get on the bus. So the Crimson Ride is free. You don't have to really show anything. You just hop on the bus and they will take you on their route. Now, the city bus system is not free. It is a small fee. It is free. There's one leg of the city bus system, the Tuscaloosa trolley system, that goes between campus and the downtown hub, where you would need to show your student ID. That one leg is free, so it can get you from the center of campus to downtown Tuscaloosa for free, and then any of the stops along the way. But the other routes that the city bus system takes, it's a small fee. I don't think it's very much, like $1 or $2. It's quite affordable. But everything for Crimson Ride, 100% free.
For sure. Another question was the settling in of international students. What plan does the graduate school have? So again, we do have orientation for our students in the graduate school. It's typically the Saturday or Sunday before classes start. We'll be sending out information soon about that to register, and we encourage you all to apply. And Charter, do you all host an international orientation?
So our orientation moved online. So as far as your immigration information and your immigration check-in process, that is completely virtual. We have a page dedicated to that where you can watch the videos necessary to cover the information that we once did in person. Now, we do have, after the start of classes, will be that very first Friday. So classes begin on January 11th. That Friday will be January 13th. And in that afternoon, we will have a welcome event where we can meet all of you. You can meet returning students. So we do that every semester so that you have a chance to engage with other students. We're going to hopefully communicate that out to you all as you get your I-20s. That's typically part of our process, is including that information. And of course, as we get closer to the start of the semester, we'll send out additional details. If there are any fall applicants among this group for fall 23, there's a possibility that maybe we might change this up and have a little bit more of a formal in-person, a return to a formal in-person thing. But we are still trying to decide how to do that. COVID taught us that we can do a lot of things virtually, but we know that a lot of students really need that in-person component. But one excellent thing is, and what I really like to stress with everybody coming in, is do attend the graduate school's orientation. They do a great job helping you get settled and getting kind of focused on that aspect of your life. And they often will invite my office to be there, where I can do kind of a miniature version of what we do through our website. So it will at least give you kind of a quick intro to everything you need to kind of get off on the right foot. And so be there for that, and you'll catch me, and then come to our welcome event, and you'll meet everybody and get to have a good time.
Perfect. So looks like we've answered all the questions that were submitted during registration regarding new students. And so if anyone has additional questions, please send those in the chat over the next minute or so. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that we need to share with our students that are newly admitted. Anyone have any questions?
And I just dropped a link to a main landing page we have, where we have our transportation information, housing, utilities, things like that. One thing I would really kind of stress with anybody coming in, not to scare anybody or anything like that, just being realistic, whether you're moving to Tuscaloosa or New York or LA, you will have initial expenses. The most expensive part of your journey to America will be that first month. And that is when For housing, you know, your monthly rate might be $700 a month, but you have to make a deposit of $700 plus your first month of rent. And sometimes they ask you to pay your last month of rent. So a $700 rent becomes $2,100 really quickly. And then you have to set up your electricity account, and you to get your powers turned on, you might have to pay a deposit there just in case if you don't have any credit history. So you might have to make a several $100 deposit for your electric account unless it's included with your rent. Your water turned on, it might cost you some money. You are going to have to furnish your apartment in most cases. Some of them come furnished, but most apartments in the US, they are empty. We walk in and they are just carpet and walls, and we are left to our own to get couches and beds and desks and things like that. And we have some lovely, lovely people in the community through Tuscaloosa's international friends who provide furniture giveaway services, but at the same time, they may be limited in what they have. So you still have to probably buy utensils and plates and cups and all sorts of other stuff. And maybe you can get a bed, but not a desk, or maybe you can get, you know, a chair, but not a couch. So, you know, preparing to purchase some of those things after your arrival, you know, it's a lot of money to get started. And so I just, you know, as you prepare, you may want to talk to your family. Even if you're on a full assistantship, you know, it will cover your ongoing expenses, but those initial expenses are going to be really hard. So start saving some money. I lived abroad for 2 years, and my most expensive part of that whole journey was my very first month, when I had to get an apartment and I had to pay for my tickets and I had to get everything set up. And my first apartment was not great. I had a terrible landlord, but I literally sold my car before I moved abroad, and I burned through the $8,000 I got for selling my car in probably a month and a half. And then when I moved back to America, I did it all over again, because we had to reestablish our lives back in the United States, and it cost a fortune. Those first few months were just extremely expensive. So anyway, I don't want to scare anybody, but that is part of the preparation process. Whether you're moving here or anywhere else in the world, you're going to have a good number of expenses at the beginning. And so, you know, talk to the ambassadors, talk to other students. They'll tell you what to expect and what shocked them. Like, I, you know, didn't prepare for X, and you know, that way maybe you can learn from their mistake or their experience in that journey.
And kind of piggybacking off of what you just said, Charter, if you are on an assistantship or a fellowship, you're not going to get paid until the end of that first month that you work it. So if you come in January, it will be the end of January before you get that payment. And it's often not a full month's payment because you haven't been here for a full month. So I think that's really important to think about as well.
Definitely. And on top of the ambassadors, you know, there are several of our international student groups that are extremely involved. I see some students who have registered are from Nigeria, Bangladesh. You know, they have very active student organizations that are more than happy to help you. I know those are, you know, listed on the international website, correct, Charter? That you can reach out perfect with those contacts. And that's definitely a great way to not only reach out and ask, but, you know, have a kind of a sense of home here on campus. And, you know, those are very involved, and those student groups are really growing. Some of you may already know students here at the university. That's probably how you heard of the university, especially if you're from some of those countries. And if you're where you're from, there's not a current active student group, then you can create one. So that way you can kind of be that sense of home for the next students who come in. So there are some questions that have been sent in the Q&A. They said, do I have to defer my admission from spring to fall since I'm still finalizing my funding? And without the proof of funds, will that further delay I-20 issuance?
I would say you do not need to defer right now. A deferral decision from one semester to another can be made as you approach the start of the next term. Like if you haven't gotten your funding in by the middle of December, at that point, you know, we're past the point where issuing an I-20 would lead to your successful arrival. And so I would say if by December 15th, you don't have funding secured, either personal or funding from the department, you need to go ahead and start the process of seeking a deferral to the fall semester. But right now, you do not need to defer at this stage. But yes, without proof of funds, we will not be able to issue an I-20. Very literally, when we talk about this, and I know a lot of people think we're being mean. It's not the case. We're not trying to be mean. It's we're tasked with, we have to estimate the cost of attendance and living expenses, and we do that through a very careful calculation of the exact tuitions and costs that the university charges, but then estimating things for your living expenses. And our living expenses are actually tied to the U.S. Department of Agriculture's minimum monthly expense for groceries for a person between the ages of 18 and 25. So that would be y'all. And so we use that as our food allotment, or our food expense estimate. And then for rent, it's based on the most common monthly rent that we see, $700 a month in the community. Now, things are sometimes more expensive. There are apartments in town that cost $2,000 and $3,000 a month. There are luxury places in town that are, you know, sell for millions of dollars. We have expensive housing and we have cheap housing, but $700 seems to be about the average for a one-bedroom apartment, or just a single bedroom within a multi-room apartment. All that being said, without the proof of funds that matches what we've estimated, we are unable to issue an I-20. And so very literally, until we can prove that we've got liquid assets available to a student, meaning like there's funds available to cover those expenses for the year, we just won't be able to issue.
For sure. And I think Charter kind of made a point that I wanted to highlight. Sometimes when you're looking for housing, it will say it's a one bedroom. Make sure that it's not a one bedroom within a unit. Sometimes even when I was looking for housing, I was like, oh, one bedroom, you know, $500, that sounds great. And then you get there and it's one bedroom within an apartment and you have 3 other roommates. Now you would have your own bedroom and your own bathroom, but you would still share like a living room and a kitchen. So making sure that it is in fact a real one bedroom apartment that only you would be in. And a lot of places are like that. They will list it as a one bedroom. So definitely read the details. You know, reach out to confirm that you understand what it actually is. And it looks like Charter, you're typing an answer for that question that someone asked. Are there any other questions that we have? Please submit those, and we will also. I'm going to drop our email in the chat. If you have any additional questions, you can definitely email us if there's something that we weren't able to address. And again, if you are a current applicant or just you're interested in the graduate school and you registered for this session, not realizing this was for our new admitted students, no worries. We hope that you learned some things, and we hope that you will be, you know, applying and be admitted, and you'll be on this session for maybe the fall semester instead. But we do have some sessions just for applicants coming up. I have dropped it in the chat earlier. It was one of the first links that I sent. I will send that again just in case you missed it. But please, if you're currently applying and you have questions about the application process, please sign up for one of our Grad Connects for applicants. Or, you know, if it's a current, you know, question that you need addressed sooner than that, definitely, you know, reach out to us via email. There's
And I answered in the Q&A, and I don't know other attendees can see the Q&A information or not, but there were a couple of questions about, you know, initial expenses and temporary housing. So I dropped a link to the initial expenses. It's from our expenses page. We also have that on our incoming student information page. And just to kind of give an overview for those initial expenses, what we're telling students is, keep in mind the rental fees and deposits, the utility deposits, small and large purchases. We estimate to bring between $2,000 and $4,000 for your initial month or two. $2,000 might be really tight. You would have to have some things really prearranged and know exactly what your expenses would be for that to be possible. But $4,000 would be a little bit more realistic. I have a recent graduate student on a very good assistantship who came to me, and he took out a loan before he left his home country for $3,000, and he burned through that $3,000 before the end of August when his first stipend payment came through. And his first stipend payment, like Amanda had mentioned, was a half payment because it was only for August 15th through the end of August. And so, September was a tough month for him, and I just wanted to, not trying to scare you about that, but, he picked an apartment that was about $800 a month. So his first month rent, deposit, and last month rent altogether was $2,400, not $2,100, and that difference of $100 a month in rent, it compounds, and then he had a lot more expenses because it wasn't furnished. So yeah, $2,000 to $4,000 is anywhere between $2,000 and $4,000. And then the other question that got put in the Q&A was about temporary housing accommodations. Honestly, this is where reaching out to the student organizations to see if maybe there's a student here who wouldn't mind you like staying with them temporarily. That is one option. But honestly, we have to kind of point to hotels and Airbnb and things like that for 1 or 2 days. The on-campus housing at the university, we have nearly 40,000 students, and the vast majority are undergraduate students. And the university doesn't even have enough housing to house all of the undergraduate students. So we actually had to contract with two apartment complexes in town because of the number of freshmen we had this year to be able to house everybody. And so there just isn't temporary on-campus housing because they're putting students in that housing. So you'll have to look to off-campus housing resources like that. We do have several very good links there for options for either long-term stay hotels or through Airbnb or the hotels links and things like that. So I hope that helps. We'll, of course, share that out repeatedly for the incoming students.
Yeah, and I think another common question that we didn't talk about is the process of once you fly into Birmingham, what does that look like?
So coming into Birmingham, so Birmingham, Alabama, and is our closest airport. It's a regional hub. It connects through Atlanta. It has some direct international flights, but very few, but it has a few direct international flights. And so most students are flying into Birmingham. Now, transportation to campus can be sometimes difficult to coordinate. I'm going to put in our arrival page link, and that will help you a little bit. But the transportation from the airport to campus, we're about a 1-hour drive from the Birmingham airport, so a little over 50 miles. And so you can either take a transportation service. There's several of them, such as Groom, and there was Crown Transportation, Prestige Limo Services. These are all a local. Scuttle Shuttle, I don't know if they're active at the moment. Uber has some options. Yes, Scuttle Shuttle. They were COVID kind of closed down a few options for us, unfortunately, because
I actually tried calling them Monday and the phone was not working. So I can confirm they're not open.
I saw their shuttle van parked somewhere, and so
Yeah, that's why I was like, oh, maybe they're back. I had a student who missed anyways, but yeah, that happened.
but Groom, I will say Groom Transportation is active. They run a daily shuttle, and they also run a shuttle from Atlanta. It's a little bit trickier to schedule that shuttle because it's once per day, and but it is an option for those who are trying to fly into Atlanta. As someone who's traveled internationally quite a bit, I love coming in and out of Atlanta, but I have a car, and I can tell you though that flight back from across the world, my wife is from Central Asia, so when we visit her family, we've been on a plane for 24 hours, and we get to Atlanta. I don't want to drive for 3 hours. It is brutal, but it is an option for you. In that transportation information, we do include information about Greyhound bus and about Amtrak. I will say that gets complicated because you still have to get from the airport to the bus stations or to the train station. And then you've got to get from the train station here to campus or wherever you're going. A lot of people don't realize that our public transportation networks are not as robust as it is back home. But there are some options for you.
For sure. So I believe, let's see, there was one more question, and then we'll wrap it up because I do have another meeting at 10 I need to hop on. And so what is the deadline for payment of fees for spring? Is it possible to pay tuition fees in installments? And what is the minimum tuition installment?
Amanda, you might know this better, and I have to look it up actually.
It is possible to pay it in installments. I do know that student accounts has payment plans. Let's see. I'm also going to have to look at those deadlines though.
I'm dropping the payment methods link into there, so they will take your money however you can get it to them. And on that payment methods link, as you scroll to the bottom, there is a payment plans information. They charge like a $30 fee or something like that to put you on a payment plan. But I know that they have a 3 payment plan option and a 2 payment plan option. But you have to register fairly early to get set up on that scheduling. And it looks like the spring payment plans open for the spring semester on November 15th. And you would have to do, that's for a 4 payment plan option. And that would require a payment in November, in December, January, and February. There's a 3 payment plan option that opens up in December, and then would require a 2nd payment in January and a 3rd payment in February. And then there's I think a 2 payment plan. So you would have to look at that page, and the payment plans kind of lay all that out.
Yeah, thank you for that. I was reading it as you're going through it. So.
Perfect. And I believe someone had asked about the accommodation. Can you allow me an accommodation to get? I'm assuming they're referring to like housing accommodations. I believe they asked when we were talking about the transportation options to and from the airport.
I will just put that arrival link back in there, but in that arrival page, you'll see at the top, we have some pre-arrival checklist things to prepare before you come, arrival information, transportation, temporary housing, which is the apartments and Verbo and Airbnb and things like that you might have. And then for long-term housing, that's where you will want to look at our housing page. What we have there is we have links to both on-campus and off-campus housing. On that housing page, we also have the temporary housing too. So we try to make sure we have it in both places wherever you land. Those accommodations, though, you would want to, at least for temporary accommodations, you would want to pre-arrange that before you get on your plane to come to the US. You don't want to try to book it once you get here because it can be challenging, especially during the start of a semester. I think Caitlin and Amanda have experienced this. Spring is not nearly as bad, but oh my gosh, August, you can forget it, because we have 40,000 people moving in, and they all bring their parents with them, and sometimes they bring their grandparents with them, and they all book hotels, and they take every available hotel in the area. If you haven't already pre-booked, it's really hard to get a hotel room sometimes. So I would definitely arrange it in advance. So.
Perfect. Okay, well, that is all the time that we have. I want to thank you guys so much for joining us. Again, if we weren't able to answer your questions or you have additional questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you, Amanda and Charter, for joining us, and we look forward to you all joining us here in the spring.
Thank you. Roll Tide, y'all.
Thank you. Roll Tide.